Hi there, welcome or welcome back to our channel. In this video, we're going to talk about the 5 hardest parts of the Cambridge Advanced exam by identifying the worst one from each paper, or the parts that, from my 15 years of experience, give candidates the biggest trouble. In this video, we're going to go over some tried and tested strategies for handling these parts of the exam better. And we're also going to do some real exam style practice for each of these tasks. So this exact approach has helped so many home study students to improve their performance in the toughest parts of the exam. And I'm really hopeful that we can help you too. So if you are preparing for the Cambridge Advanced exam or you just want to know more about it, then I highly suggest you subscribe to Home Studies. Kicking off the list at number 5 is speaking part 2. So in this task, you get a set of 3 photos, and you have to talk about 2 of those pictures on your own for 1 minute. So you focus on 2 of the pictures and you completely ignore picture number 3. When you're done speaking, the examiner will ask your speaking partner a question about your pictures, and then vice versa. After your speaking partner is done talking, the examiner will ask you a question about theirs. Take a moment to look at the 3 pictures and have a think. What do you think the common theme could be? That's right, they all show people who are in crowds. So which of the 2 pictures do you think you would speak about? Let's take a look at the questions. In what situations might these crowds occur? How do you think the people might be feeling? So you need to answer both questions about both pictures. So choose the pictures that you think you could say the most about. So for speaking part 2, which in my opinion is by far the hardest part of the speaking test, requires a game plan. Now, please do not try and improvise this and, go with what feels right, because it will end in a big hot mess. You need to have a strategy. So first of all, you need to go over the language for comparing. And these are really, keywords like while, whereas, and both. Then briefly, and I repeat briefly, describe the photos. If you spend too much time caught up in description, then you won't have enough time to do the important stuff, namely comparing the pictures and answering the questions about them. Next, you need to go over the language for speculating. Now, when you look at the pictures and answer the questions, you might not know anything for sure, and you're not meant to. Cambridge wants you, they expect you to use the language of speculation. So this is to say things like, it might be, it could be, perhaps, or maybe, it looks like, it appears to be. You know the kind of stuff I'm talking about. There are no right or wrong answers. In this part of the test, what you say is much less important than how you say it. Number 4 on the list is listening part 4. So people tend to agree that this is the hardest part of the listening test. Part 2 is tough as well, but part 4 takes the cake. In this task, you listen to a series of 5 monologues, and they're all on the same topic. And each person speaks for about 30 seconds. Then there are 2 tasks, and for each task, you have to match each of the 5 speakers to one of the 8 possible answers. See, even the instructions are confusing. Let's look at a sample task to clarify what you need to do. So this is more or less what part 4 would look like in the test. So there's task 1 and task 2, and both of these tasks have a different question attached. You can see there, they're the 5 speakers, and you have to answer a question for each of those speakers in each of the tasks. Now, there is one important thing that I need you to take note of, as my students often have a problem with it. Look at task 2 and look at options A and B. Someone was ahead of their time. They used to be a bit of a vandal. Now, in this situation, we are not talking about the plural. In English, when we don't know or we don't want to say someone's gender, so whether they're male or female, then we use the pronouns they and their.
Part 4. Part 4 consists of 2 tasks. You will hear 5 short extracts in which people are talking about inventions. For questions 21 to 25, choose from the list A to H the person who is speaking. Now look at task 2. For questions 26 to 30, choose from the list A to H what each speaker is expressing. While you listen, you must complete both tasks. Speaker 1.
I know there's a lot of controversy on their effects on the environment, but I think the aerosol can is an amazing invention. The concept of the aerosol originated as early as 1790, when self-pressurized carbonated beverages were introduced in France. In 1949, can spray paint was invented by Edward Seymour, and the first colour was aluminium. Seymour's wife suggested the use of the aerosol can filled with paint. I use these for large murals, and of course the modern robotic versions are used in industry to spray things such as cars. I get a lot of criticism for using aerosols, but I don't drive a car, so my contribution to the pollution problem is a lot less than most people I know, so I don't lose sleep over it.
Speaker 2.
Now, you may argue that this isn't really an invention, because it's not a machine or a gadget, but denim jeans that have revolutionized the world. Look around you. Denim is everywhere, and is a great equalizer of class, as the poorest kid on the street to the wealthiest film star wears jeans. I wear them to work every day, and wouldn't cope without them outside in the weather and dealing with the cattle. The only time I don't wear them is if I go to the theater or to a nice restaurant. That's quite a rare event, though.
Speaker 3.
I have a lot of free time now, so I often go to fairs and exhibitions, and the toy fair is always a favourite of mine, despite my age. In my day, of course, there was no such thing as a robotic toy. This robotic dog was just wonderful. I used to have a dog, but I don't have the energy to walk one now, so this would make a great substitute. I spent an hour playing with it at the toy fair, and I did get some funny looks. It works on voice recognition, so you really do feel like you are the master and it has its own personality like a real pet. Of course it doesn't, but the fantasy is fun. I'm very tempted to spend some of my retirement fund on one.
Speaker 4.
This invention goes back hundreds of years. In fact, Leonardo da Vinci actually designed a bicycle in 1490, although it was never made. Mind you, he seemed to draw just about every modern invention hundreds of years before they were actually invented. Pure genius. You wouldn't catch him without a job. My friends and family call me the biker because I cycle everywhere. Until I get a salary, I can't afford a car, but I'm not sure that I really want one. Maybe I should be a postal worker. I could cycle all day delivering letters. Sounds good.
Speaker 5.
I love detective novels and films, and have always been interested in forensic science. I think the polygraph machine or lie detector is a fabulous device. I'd love to have one. I certainly know a few people I'd like to try it on, especially when I suspect someone is being aggressive towards a relative. My job is pretty stressful at times, and it's hard to get the truth out of people, especially when they're frightened of the consequences. It's often what they don't say that gives the game away.
Now you'll hear part 4 again. Speaker 1.
I know there's a lot of controversy on their effects on the environment, but I think the aerosol can is an amazing invention. The concept of the aerosol originated as early as 1790, when self-pressurized carbonated beverages were introduced in France. In 1949, can spray paint was invented by Edward Seymour, and the first colour was aluminium. Seymour's wife suggested the use of the aerosol can filled with paint. I use these for large murals, and of course the modern robotic versions are used in industry to spray things such as cars. I get a lot of criticism for using aerosols, but I don't drive a car, so my contribution to the pollution problem is a lot less than most people I know, so I don't lose sleep over it.
Speaker 2.
Now, you may argue that this isn't really an invention, because it's not a machine or a gadget, but denim jeans that have revolutionized the world. Look around you. Denim is everywhere, and is a great equalizer of class, as the poorest kid on the street to the wealthiest film star wears jeans. I wear them to work every day, and wouldn't cope without them outside in the weather and dealing with the cattle. The only time I don't wear them is if I go to the theater or to a nice restaurant. That's quite a rare event, though.
Speaker 3.
I have a lot of free time now, so I often go to fairs and exhibitions, and the toy fair is always a favourite of mine, despite my age. In my day, of course, there was no such thing as a robotic toy. This robotic dog was just wonderful. I used to have a dog, but I don't have the energy to walk one now, so this would make a great substitute. I spent an hour playing with it at the toy fair, and I did get some funny looks. It works on voice recognition, so you really do feel like you are the master and it has its own personality like a real pet. Of course it doesn't, but the fantasy is fun. I'm very tempted to spend some of my retirement fund on one.
Speaker 4.
This invention goes back hundreds of years. In fact, Leonardo da Vinci actually designed a bicycle in 1490, although it was never made. Mind you, he seemed to draw just about every modern invention hundreds of years before they were actually invented. Pure genius. You wouldn't catch him without a job. My friends and family call me the biker because I cycle everywhere. Until I get a salary, I can't afford a car, but I'm not sure that I really want one. Maybe I should be a postal worker. I could cycle all day delivering letters. Sounds good.
Speaker 5.
I love detective novels and films, and have always been interested in forensic science. I think the polygraph machine or lie detector is a fabulous device. I'd love to have one. I certainly know a few people I'd like to try it on, especially when I suspect someone is being aggressive towards a relative. My job is pretty stressful at times, and it's hard to get the truth out of people, especially when they're frightened of the consequences. It's often what they don't say that gives the game away.
That's the end of Part 4.
Pause the video real quick and check your answers. How did you manage to do that? Did you find task 1 easier than task 2? People often do. So remember, when you check your answers, don't get disheartened if you haven't got them all right. You only need to get 6 out of 10 to pass this task. You only need 60% to pass the exam. So don't worry, don't go for perfect. It's not worth the stress. You just need a pass. So some people do task 1 first, so on the first listening, and then task 2 on the second listening. Now this is okay, but it is risky because if you miss something or someone coughs, you don't get another shot. So I advise you to do both tasks simultaneously or at the same time, which is obviously difficult because you're splitting your focus. What's more, you're looking at 10 questions and 16 options at the same time. There's a lot to focus on. You'll notice that there are more possible answers than questions. There are 3 that you shouldn't use, and they're just there to make this task extra challenging. Thanks for that, Cambridge. And finally, the information doesn't always appear in order. So you might not hear the answer to task 1 first. It might come second, and you might hear the answer to task 2 before you hear the answer to task 1, if that makes sense. So you do really need to be good at multitasking. And to do well, I suggest you listen out for distractors. So these are words or expressions that are designed to mislead you. Again, thanks for that, Cambridge. They do love their distractors. And also look out for paraphrasing. So these are words or expressions that say the same thing, but they don't use the same words as what's written in the prompts. If you see the same word appearing in one of the options and in the audio, then that's probably not the right answer. Coming in at number 3 on the list is writing part 1. To be honest, all of the formal writing tasks, so the essay, the report, the proposal, these tend to be more difficult than, for example, the review or the informal letter, because formal writing is just more challenging and it's further away from how we would naturally speak or communicate. So of all of those, the essay is the most difficult one. In this task, you read a text and then you write an essay based on points included in the text. So you have to explain which of the 2 points is more important, and you have to give reasons for your opinion. You have to write this in a style that Cambridge wants, and this adds an extra level of complexity to the task. So let's take a look at what a task involves. Pause the video for a moment and read the full essay task. Press play when you're ready to talk a bit about it. Good, so now that you've read the task, you know that you need to focus on 2 points and ignore the third one. So if you were writing this essay, which 2 points would you choose? Which would you have the most to say about? I'd go for these 2, an outdoor gym and coffee shops and restaurants. I can clearly see the benefits of both, and I feel like I would have the best vocabulary to discuss them. And what about the opinions? Do you think they're useful? Well, if you want to, you can use them, but please remember you have to rephrase them. You will lose points if you just use the exact same wording that they use in the essay task. So once you've understood the topic and you've chosen your 2 points, then you have to write your thesis statement. Okay, this is the sentence that summarizes the main idea of your essay. And really, you can't begin to develop your essay until you've got this statement. Now, the thesis statement can be written as either a statement or as a question. So here would be my 2 options based upon my choices. Which one do you think is better? Take a moment and have a look. Well, it's a bit of a trick question, to be honest, because both of these are fine. You can go with the one you prefer. I think personally that a question is better because it's more engaging to the reader, but this really is a personal preference, and either of these could work just fine. The thesis statement is probably the most important sentence you'll write in your entire essay, and if you get it wrong, then it can undermine the rest of your writing. It's a statement that clearly establishes the purpose, the reason for your essay. So that should focus the rest of the writing on either proving your thesis statement or answering the question that it asks. Beyond the thesis statement, you also need to make sure that your essay is really well organized. So this means that you use linking words. These are things like in addition, furthermore, however, on the other hand. You know those. And if you don't know them, please get in touch with Home Studies because you should know them. Then the essay needs to be well structured. So there needs to be an introduction with the thesis statement, and then paragraph 1 with pros and cons for point 1, then paragraph 2 with pros and cons for point 2, and then finally a conclusion. Remember that the essay should be as neutral as possible, so please save your personal opinions, the references to I, for the conclusion. And make your arguments as balanced as possible. So as I said, you need to weigh up the pros and the cons, the advantages and the disadvantages for the points you've chosen to talk about. We're really getting into the tough stuff now. clocking in at number 2 on the list is reading part 7. Reading part 6 is also really tough. It's also a bit of a stinker, but I think reading part 7 is longer and there's more points on offer, which is why it's the one that appears in the list. So in the task, you are given a single page of text with numbered gaps. Now, each gap represents a missing paragraph. So after the text, there are 7 paragraphs, which are not in the right order, and you have to read the text and read the paragraphs and decide which paragraph best fits each gap. So it's kind of like a reading puzzle that you need to put together. Take a look at this short sample from an advanced exam task in reading part 7. Pause the video and read the extracts and the paragraphs, and then decide which of the 2 paragraphs, C or D, best fits the gap. Now, I want you please to make a note of why you choose the paragraph that you do. So what keywords or expressions make you sure of your answer? Press play when you're ready to check your logic. So the correct answer here is C, and it's the right answer for 2 reasons. Number 1, there is a reference to the same place in both paragraphs, and that place is the freight bay. That's link number 1. And link number 2 is a logical link. You see at the end of the paragraph, they say, "You wouldn't have brought me here otherwise." And then Titus said nothing, but the point could not be denied. So the point they're referring to is the point that Sky made at the end of the first paragraph. So both of those things link, which means it's a good fit for the missing gap. If you're curious about the rest of this test and you'd like to see how well you can handle a full exam task, then just download the free practice pack we've linked to the video. You can just click the link below. So if you bravely accepted the challenge and you did the full exam task in the practice pack, then pause the video and check your answers. Now, again, remember, you don't need it to be perfect. It's very hard to get a perfect score in this part of the test, but your goal is 8 out of 12. So if you can get 4 correct answers, then that's awesome. And please do leave enough time to do this in the test. There are 2 points for each correct answer, so you really don't want to rush and make careless mistakes. Choosing the hardest part of the reading test was a really hard task in itself because some of those tasks are just so tough. Reading part 6 is a beast, but I think reading part 7 is even worse because it's longer, it's more dense, and there's more points on offer, so there's more pressure to do well in that task. Anyway, how to approach it? Well, first of all, read the main article to get the overall sense of what it's about and see how the text develops. When you've read it once, then take a closer look at what comes directly before and after each gap. This is where the magic happens, okay? This is where you can find the clues, the references to people, places, or ideas that can help you to work out which paragraph comes next. So once you've done that, go over and read the paragraphs, so the 7 extra paragraphs. And as you read them, highlight or underline any clues that might help you to identify where they should go. So think back to those reference points from the main text. Now, remember, once you think you've got the right answers, then go back and read the whole text again from the beginning. Now, don't groan and moan and roll your eyes. I know it seems like a lot, but honestly, it's essential because once you read the whole thing through, you'll check that everything makes sense. You'll see if the whole thing flows and connects like it should, and you'll be able to spot any possible mistakes. Okay, so I know it's a bit time consuming, but you just need to make sure that you've got enough time for this task. I recommend doing it right at the end, and make sure that you allow for that, and do read through the whole thing because there's a lot of marks on offer, and if you get them muddled, you could pay dearly for it. So the reigning champion, the most difficult part of the use of English, and probably the most difficult part of the entire advanced exam, is coming in at first position, the use of English part 4. Now, if you've done one of these before, or maybe you've heard people speak about them, you'll know that they are tough. And the idea is basically that you are given a sentence, a keyword, and a second sentence that has a gap in the middle, and you need to use this keyword to complete the second sentence, the idea being that the original sentence and the sentence you write have a similar meaning. I know it sounds a bit complicated. Let's take a look at an example and the instructions to try and clarify things a little bit. Let's take a look at the instructions together. So for questions 25 to 30, complete the second sentence so that it has a similar meaning to the first sentence using the word given. Do not change the word given. You must use between 3 and 6 words, including the word given. So an example would look something like this. George should have worked harder if he wanted to pass the exam. That is the original sentence. Then the word given is succeeded. So you need to transform the sentence starting with had George worked harder, and this is an example of inversion, he would have succeeded in passing the exam. So the second sentence has a similar meaning to the first, but it uses the word given. Now you can see there are 2 points on offer. One for he would have succeeded, and one for the correct preposition, in. Right, so pause the video and try and do this use of English part 4 activity on your own. So look at the original sentence, look at the keyword, and then think about how you can transform those second sentences to keep the sense, the essence of the original sentence, but by using some new language. All right, it's a tough one, so I wish you good luck. Press play when you're ready to check your answers. All right, so how did you get on with that task? Did it make you cry a little bit? I'm joking. I'm not really. It's a pretty tough task. Pause the video and check your answers. As you can see there, each question gets 2 marks, and the marks are delineated by that yellow line, okay? So even if you don't know everything, even if you make a mistake in one part, you can still get 1 mark for the other part. So it's always worth having a guess. And remember, you don't need to get 100%. This is just, it's just not realistic. You need to aim for 7 out of 12. This is the goal. This is how you can pass the task and, perform well in the exam overall. Use of English part 4. Here we are. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. This part is hard, and every single student I've ever had has said the same thing. So don't worry, you're not alone. And the reason why this is so hard is because not only do you need to have a really advanced knowledge of English phrasal verbs and idioms and expressions and grammar structures, but you also need to be able to think like Cambridge wants you to think. So you have to be able to see what they're going for. And even as a native speaker with 15 years of experience of doing this stuff, I sometimes look at a question and I'm like, oh? And I have no idea what they want. So, this is just part of the game. Anyway, to minimize your chances of confusion, I've got a few tips to help you. So first of all, look at the original sentence and then the second sentence and cross out any information that's repeated. That's going to leave you with the key language that needs transforming. It will help you to focus very clearly and make sure you're not leaving anything out in the transformation. Now, if they have like a verb, for example, expect, then I bet you the answer is going to involve the noun expectation. If the original sentence has the adjective serious, I'm sure that the transformed sentence is going to need the adverb seriously. So these are kind of things you have to think of. You have to start to think like Cambridge wants you to think. And you have to practice these to get them right. Now, it can be really hard to do this on your own. So if you need a tutor, please contact us at Home Studies, because this is what we do and we can help to get you through. Well, that's a wrap. And now it's over to you. So do you agree with our list or not? Which part of the exam is the most difficult for you? What would you put at number 1 on the list? So why don't you write to us and let us know in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you and interact with you a little bit. Well, that's going to do it. I hope that you have a much better idea now of what to expect from the hardest parts of the Cambridge Advanced Exam, and you also have a better idea of how to cope with these on test day. So if you do feel like you got something from the video, please go ahead and share it on your socials or give us a like. We'd appreciate that too. All right, well, don't forget to leave your opinions and reactions to our list in the comment section below. And besides that, have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope I'll be seeing you in the next video.